The silence after divorce felt heavier than any words, like a weight that pressed against the chest no matter how much air was pulled in. Nights stretched endlessly, and the walls of the bedroom echoed back a kind of emptiness that seemed colder than winter itself. The bed was too wide, the sheets too clean, and the silence too honest. Every creak in the house reminded of what was no longer there, and even laughter from distant neighbors felt like a cruel reminder of what had been lost. It wasn't just about being alone. It was the feeling of being untouched, unseen, as if the skin had forgotten what it was to be wanted. For so long, survival meant routine: wake up, move through the day, fill the hours with distractions, and then return to the same hollow space where the only company was memory. There was no desire to try again. The heart was too bruised, too tired of giving, too weary of the idea that anyone could ever be different. Love had felt like a gamble already lost, and no part of life seemed worth risking again. But the human heart has a strange way of betraying even the strongest vows. It happened quietly, without warning, like light slipping under a locked door. The first moment was nothing grand, just a presence, a look, the sound of a voice that lingered longer than it should. And then, one night, the silence broke not with words, but with the weight of another body pressing close, the warmth of arms pulling everything that was scattered back into one piece. That first touch was not expected, not invited, yet it undid everything carefully built to stay safe. Loneliness had a taste, bitter and sharp, but when his body pressed against mine, it shifted into something sweet, something intoxicating. The warmth seeped into the skin, into the veins, until the body remembered what it had almost forgotten, that to be held is to exist fully. The quiet no longer felt empty, it felt charged, alive with breath and heartbeat, and the subtle tremor of desire returning after years of sleep. It wasn't a kiss at first. It was stillness, the kind where every second stretched longer than the last, where the air between two mouths hummed with a question neither dared to voice. And then, when lips finally met, it wasn't polite or cautious. It was desperate, like drowning lungs finding air. The taste of him carried something that was more than lust. It was rediscovery, the aching reminder that passion could still be found, that skin could still burn, that loneliness could be turned into fire. Every barrier broke with that kiss. Fingers traced lines across a body that had known neglect, reminding it of its softness, its hunger, its need. Breath caught, hearts raced, and silence was drowned by whispers, sighs, the sounds of two people who no longer wanted to hold back. It wasn't just the body that came alive. It was the soul, uncoiling, stretching, daring to believe in desire again. Time melted. What should have been a fleeting moment stretched into a night that refused to end. Every touch asked for more, every kiss demanded another, and every curve of the body was met with reverence, as if being discovered for the very first time. Loneliness had ended not with a conversation, not with promises, but with arms that refused to let go and lips that taught the body how to remember again. And yet, beyond the fever of passion, there was something else, something deeper. In the pause between kisses, in the stillness after bodies had given everything, there was the quiet of peace, a peace that whispered, "You are wanted, you are here, you are alive again." The silence that once crushed became a silence that healed, because it was no longer empty. It was filled with warmth, with breath, with the heartbeat of another who held without judgment, who kissed without hesitation, who touched without fear. For so long, love had seemed like a door that was locked forever. That night proved it was only waiting to be opened again. Loneliness had been the cage, but passion rediscovered was the key, and once it turned, nothing would ever be the same. The silence after divorce was broken not by words, but by the truth of his arms, and in that moment, life began again. The first touch wasn't just skin against skin. It was the breaking of walls that had been built too high, too strong, for far too long. It was the release of years of carrying pain in silence, of pretending not to need what the heart still craved. That touch carried more weight than words could ever carry, because in that single moment, everything hidden beneath layers of doubt and disappointment rose to the surface. It had been easy to believe desire was gone, smothered by betrayal, neglect, and the long nights of emptiness that follow broken promises. For years, the body felt like a vessel abandoned, touched only by memory, starved of warmth, starved of tenderness. To be seen had become a distant wish, and to be wanted seemed almost impossible. But when his hand traced across my arm, when fingers lingered just long enough to make breath catch, it wasn't just touch, it was recognition, a silent acknowledgement of everything lost and everything still alive inside. That first moment unlocked something I thought had been buried for good. It wasn't lust rushing in blindly. It was hunger, slow and deep, the kind that had been waiting quietly, patiently, for someone who could stir it back to life. My skin tingled not just from contact, but from the flood of memory reminding me what it felt like to surrender, what it felt like to trust the closeness of another body. There was hesitation too, a trembling fear that if I gave in, I would break again. But the way his hand moved, the way his body leaned closer without force, spoke in a language older than fear. It whispered of safety, of release, of something that could be both gentle and consuming at once. And then, as lips brushed against mine, the last defense collapsed. Years of pain, of holding back, of pushing down longing, melted away into the heat of that kiss. It was not the kiss of strangers. It was the kiss of two souls finding each other in a storm. It carried hunger, yes, but also healing. His mouth pressed against mine with urgency, but within that urgency there was care. Every breath was shared, every sigh was caught, and every tremor of the body felt like truth being spoken without words. My heart, once locked away, pounded wildly as if remembering its rhythm for the first time in years. Hands moved across skin that hadn't been worshipped in so long, and with every touch came a rush of fire. Not the careless fire of passion alone, but the sacred fire of rediscovery, of realizing the body was still alive, still capable of desire, still worthy of being touched and adored. My body responded without thought, leaning into him, searching for more, giving into the hunger that had been denied for too long. The way he held me wasn't possession. It was a kind of surrender too, as if he needed this as much as I did. As his fingers threaded into my hair, as his breath mingled with mine, I realized this wasn't just about passion. It was about reclaiming pieces of myself that had been left in the shadows, forgotten under the weight of sorrow. With each touch, I came back to life. The night moved slowly, yet too fast all at once. His body pressed against mine, his warmth sinking deep into my bones, his lips marking trails across my skin that felt like promises being rewritten. Every sound that escaped my lips was unbidden, raw, pulled from a place deeper than desire. It was the sound of release, of years of silence breaking apart, of chains snapping one by one. What was once numb became alive, what was once broken began to mend, and what was once denied could no longer be ignored. I clung to him not just for passion, but for the way he made me feel seen, desired, alive again. The closeness was overwhelming, but in the most beautiful way, like drowning and being saved at the same time. And when the night settled into its quiet after the storm, when our bodies rested against one another, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace, not the kind that comes from solitude, not the kind that comes from silence, but the peace that comes when the heart finally releases its grief into something greater. The first touch wasn't just skin against skin. It was the return of everything I thought I had lost, and in that moment, The hunger was no longer a burden, but a gift. What began as comfort in his arms turned into something I hadn't felt in years, something that crept in slowly and then consumed me before I could resist. At first, it was only the closeness, the steady weight of his embrace, the simple warmth of being held. My body relaxed against his as though it had been waiting for that moment, as though the ache of loneliness had finally found its cure. There was safety there, a quiet reassurance that I wasn't invisible, that I wasn't untouchable, that someone could still hold me as if I mattered. But comfort has a way of shifting into something deeper when the heart has been starved for too long. His breath against my skin stirred something that had been buried under years of restraint. The rhythm of his chest rising and falling against mine became a melody, one that my body remembered even if my mind had long denied it. I tilted my face without thinking, drawn by a force greater than logic, and in that fragile second, our lips met. The kiss was hesitant for a heartbeat, soft and tentative, but then it ignited. Fire surged where comfort had once been. It wasn't polite or restrained. It was hungry, raw, desperate, as if both of us had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it. Our lips clashed and lingered, searching and claiming, giving and taking all at once. Each movement carried a message. Each press of his mouth against mine spoke words that had no sound. I could feel years of silence unraveling inside me. His hands tightened around my waist, pulling me closer, as though the space between us was unbearable. My own hands moved on their own, tracing the lines of his back, needing to feel every inch, needing to be reminded that this was real. The taste of him filled me, intoxicating, dizzying, erasing the walls I had so carefully built around my heart. It wasn't just passion. It was healing wrapped in desire, pain dissolving into hunger. Every kiss pulled me further out of the shadows I had been hiding in. Every touch reminded me of the woman I still was beneath the scars. His lips moved with urgency, but also with a tenderness that made me want to cry. It was as though he understood without words how much had been lost, how much had been denied, and he was determined to give it back. The fire between us spread quickly, searing away hesitation. My breath grew shallow, my body trembling not with fear, but with an ache so strong it bordered on desperation. The rhythm of our mouths, the sync of our breathing, the friction of our closeness, it became a dance, primal and honest. There was no past in that moment, no pain, no betrayal, only the truth of two souls finding release in each other. His fingers threaded into my hair, tugging gently, and I gasped into his mouth. That sound, unbidden and raw, seemed to ignite him further, and the kiss deepened until it was no longer just lips meeting lips, but a collision of need. My body pressed harder into his, craving his warmth, craving his strength, craving the way he made me feel alive again. Every second was charged, every heartbeat loud, every shiver more than just physical. It was emotional, spiritual, undeniable. I realized then how much I had been starving, not just for touch, but for connection. It wasn't lust alone driving me. It was the yearning to be seen, to be wanted, to be cherished in a way that went beyond the body. And in his arms, in the fire of his kiss, I found all of that. He held me as though I was precious, kissed me as though I was essential, touched me as though I was unforgettable. Time disappeared. The world outside ceased to exist. There was only the heat of his mouth, the strength of his arms, the way our bodies seemed to know each other without ever having been introduced. The kiss became a rhythm, a language all its own, and we spoke it fluently, desperately, without pause. When we finally broke apart to breathe, our foreheads rested together, breaths mingling, hearts racing in perfect sync. There was no going back after that. Comfort had turned into fire, and fire had turned into a truth that neither of us could ignore. His lips had taught me what my heart had been afraid to believe, that even after loss, even after years of silence, passion could return, and with it, the possibility of something deeper. What began as comfort in his arms became the fire that woke me back to life, and in that fire I found both healing and hunger entwined as one. Love wasn't expected, lust wasn't planned, yet when it came with a force that stripped away every defense. There was no careful calculation, no search for something deeper, no longing for passion to reappear. Life had already settled into its quiet rhythm, a rhythm built on surviving heartbreak and convincing the heart that desire was no longer needed. But then, unexpectedly, there he was, and with him came the unraveling of everything I thought I had put to rest. The first night was not born from promises or confessions, but from closeness, from the way his presence wrapped itself around the loneliness I had grown too familiar with. A touch became a pause became a kiss, and a kiss became something neither of us planned. The hunger that stirred between us was undeniable, a wildfire sparked by years of silence and the simple truth of wanting. His mouth against mine carried urgency, but beneath it lay something softer, something that whispered of connection, even as our bodies tangled in restless need. It felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. His hands moved over me with a reverence that felt almost holy, yet the urgency in them spoke of craving, of hunger too long denied. I gave in without thought, without hesitation, as if my body had been waiting for this moment all along. Every sigh, every gasp, every shiver was pulled out of me like secrets I had kept locked away. The night unfolded in waves, each one carrying me deeper into him, deeper into the space where desire and tenderness met in perfect collision. There was lust, raw and undeniable, in the way his body pressed into mine, in the way his lips claimed me over and over. But there was also love, unexpected and terrifying, in the way his eyes searched mine between the moments of fire, in the way he held me as if letting go would mean breaking something fragile. It was in those pauses, in those breaths where hearts pounded against each other, that I realized this wasn't just physical. This was something greater, something unplanned but impossible to resist. The nights that followed blurred into one another, each one as intoxicating as the last. We didn't speak of it, didn't label it, didn't dare to ask what it meant. We only surrendered, breathless and trembling, again and again. Sometimes it was slow, tender, the kind of love that left tears in the corners of my eyes. Sometimes it was fierce, desperate, like two people trying to consume the very air around them. But always it was real, always it left me undone. There was no line dividing love and lust. They became the same, entwined so tightly that I couldn't separate them even if I wanted to. When his lips traced the curve of my neck, when his hands gripped me with both hunger and care, when his body moved with mine in perfect rhythm, I felt not only desired but cherished. Every moment was a confession, not in words but in the language of skin and breath, in the surrender of souls that had found refuge in one another. And yet, it was never just the physical closeness. It was the way he looked at me in the stillness afterward, when the fire quieted and only silence remained. It was the way his arm draped over me as though he feared I might disappear, the way his fingers absent-mindedly traced circles against my skin. Those small gestures carried more weight than even the most passionate night, because in them was the truth. I was not just wanted, I was seen. The unexpectedness of it all made it even more powerful. I had not searched for him, not prayed for this, not even believed it was possible. But love has a way of finding us when we stop believing. Lust has a way of breaking down walls when we least expect it. And when the two collide, when they meet in the same place, the result is nothing less than life-changing. I had thought my story was already written, that the chapters of passion and desire were closed. Yet those nights proved me wrong. They showed me that healing can come not only from time and solitude, but from giving in to what the heart and body crave. They reminded me that love is not always planned, lust is not always dangerous, and when the two meet without warning, they can create something pure, something undeniable, something unforgettable. Love wasn't expected, lust wasn't planned, yet in surrendering to both, I found a truth I never thought I would feel again. If these words touched you, if the fire and tenderness of these stories stirred something inside, remember this: love and passion are never truly gone, only waiting to be awakened again. Every silence can be broken, every wound can be healed, and every heart can burn once more. Stay with us for more stories that speak to your soul, that remind you of the power of intimacy and the beauty of rediscovery. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so that others may find these stories too. Your journey through love and desire continues here, and each story will bring you closer to the truth you've been searching for. Until next time, hold on to the fire within.